Thank you very much, Tim. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Will you give a big warm welcome, please? Down Patrick, welcome to Arlene Foster. Arlene, this is the St. Patrick's Centre you know very well.
Yes.
It goes back to your early political.
Yes, well, of course, Christian Heritage in St. Patrick was one of the 5 signature projects in tourism when I was tourism minister. Part of the job I loved a great deal. We used to fight about the fact that there wasn't a signature project in Fermanagh, but the 6th signature project obviously was the Loch Earn. But no, so I have been here, and it's really good to be here on its 20th anniversary and to celebrate that.
Up until earlier this year, you would normally be introduced as First Minister Arlene Foster. Do you have you got used to not being introduced that way anymore?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Arlene from Fermanagh will do.
Arlene from Fermanagh. How much has life changed for you since?
Well, life has changed, of course, because we have had a very pressurised period of time. Obviously, being First Minister of Northern Ireland is pressurised at any time, but during COVID, it was particularly difficult because the executive was having to take, and still are having to take, very difficult decisions about COVID, about trying to keep people safe, but at the same time acknowledging that we had to allow people to earn a living, because that obviously has an impact on people's well-being as well. So trying to balance those two things was a hugely difficult task, I have to say.
We'll obviously talk a lot more as we go through the evening, but as Tim said, this is about, it's about faith and life. So can we take you back to young Arlene Kelly?
Yes.
Are we really at it by any means?
Could well be, could well be.
We'll work that out later. What was your early childhood like?
So I grew up at a little place called Dernawilt, which is 4 miles from Roslay, if anybody knows County Fermanagh, about 2 miles from the border. And I had what I often describe as an idyllic early childhood. I went to primary school just a mile away from where I lived, Adramsea Primary School, and that's where my church was as well. So I've described Adramsea as probably being my whole world up until about the age of 8, because that's where I went to for Sunday school and church, and I went to school in the little primary school there. I went to school very early, actually, Gerry. I was 4 in July, and my mother sent me in September to, probably looking to get me out of the house, to school. And because of that, I had 2 years in P7.
All right.
So I then became, from being one of the youngest, I became the eldest in my year.
As you went on to grammar school?
Because when I left grammar school, I was 19 in the July.
Gotcha.
So I was 19 actually when I went to university.
Talking about your mum and dad, your dad Johnny, who's from Fermanagh.
Yes.
He was a policeman and part-time farmer.
Yes, that's right.
And your mother, Georgina, she was from Sandy Row.
That's right.
How did those two meet?
So my father was he had an uncle that lived on Distillery Street in Belfast, and he used to go up to visit him. I think they met on a blind date at a football match, would you believe it? My mother was a Linfield supporter. My father was a White supporter, distillery man, until the day he died, I have to say. Wow. And even when they went out to Lisburn, he was still a White supporter. And they met up. And then my mum used to come down. She used to write to him then, because, of course, this was in the 1950s. And then she would come down on the train to Clonus Junction. And Clonus is only about, I would say, about 3 miles from...
a bit of a culture shock for her, wasn't it?
So she used to come down and visit and then go back again. And then they got married in 1957. And that was the year that they stopped the trains. So she was stuck in Fermanagh. So yeah, I mean, she was a very thin lady, and she was obviously from Belfast. And a lot of the locals in Fermanagh didn't give my mother much hope. They said that she was like a rake, and they'd give her a couple of weeks and she'd be away back to her mother in Belfast. But my mum and dad were married for 54 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you spend your time then between Fermanagh and Belfast? Did you?
Yeah, no, we did go to Belfast quite a bit to see my granny Sills, who lived in Sandy Row. So we used to go up on the bus to Glengall Street. And I have memories of the Troubles going up into Belfast, and there was one particular journey when we were coming home. The bus was attacked as it was leaving Belfast, and every window was taken out of the bus, and the bus driver just drove to Dungannon with all the windows out. And I think we changed the bus in Dungannon then, and of course, we came home and my father was horrified, and that's it. You're not going back to Belfast again. But we did. We kept going back.
You had 2 brothers and 2 sisters and a younger brother, David. Was it a political family?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, we, as I say, we lived very close to the border. My grandmother lived with us, my Granny Kelly, who lived, she was 97. There's a funny story about that, actually, because my father was an only child, and when he got married, my mum and him said, oh, well, Granny Kelly will live with us because my granda was deceased at that time, and my father said, oh, well, Granny's getting on now, you know, and she lived till she was 97. But anyway, and she was very fond of my mother. My mother did everything for her. But yeah, we lived in a very lovely place, an idyllic place. And really, we went, obviously, to the 12th of July, and the next door neighbours would look after the farm while we were away for the 12th, and people would leave their bicycles in our house when they were away somewhere, because we were just the house up from the crossroads, where people maybe got a lift, and they left their bicycles there. So listen, not political at all.
All that ideal, that idyll that you're talking about came to a shattering end when your dad was a member of the RUC. The IRA came visiting the house one night in an attempt to shoot him. That must have been. Can you remember any of that with any clarity?
Oh no, I can remember it very well because I was 8.5 at the time. My eldest sister had got married. She was living a couple of miles away from, and had come to visit with her baby son. And we left them out to the car and they drove off. And then we all went back into the house, and my father went in to close the cattle into the byre for the night. And when we all went in, and my father was outside, the gunshots started then. And he was hit, but thankfully, it just skimmed his forehead sort of thing, and he fell and he danced about, and then he came crawling into the house with blood coming from his forehead. And we all then went up, he all went up the stairs to his bedroom because he had flares fitted to the house because in case of an attack. So the flares went up, and I think it was about 7-8 minutes before security forces came.
And did you see all this?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
How did it affect you? How did they explain it to you?
Well, it was a very strange time. I always remember, I'll never forget my mother. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table. She'd come in from outside. She was sitting at the kitchen table. I don't know what she was doing. I'll never forget her face, but she just froze, Gerry, you know.
I bet.
And then my father came in. And it seems like it was in my head it's happening in slow time, but of course it happened very rapidly. Yeah. And as I say, my grandmother was there. She would have been in her 80s at the time. And yeah, it was a very difficult time because Daddy was told that he had a choice to make. He either stayed where he was and took his chances, essentially, or he could move away to somewhere like Lisburn, far away, or he could move somewhere like Listonskey, and he chose to go to Listonskey.
So you were forced to move home?
Yeah. Well, we stayed for about a month until we were spedded out, and he acquired a guard dog during those weeks called Sammy. So we always said Sammy was from Belfast, obviously. But we had this Alsatian dog who, to us, was very friendly, but the moment anybody approached, was vicious. You know, so he obviously was a trained dog.
How was it explained to you what had happened?
Well, obviously, things were happening on the news. I won't say that we were shielded away from those things, but I do recall being at a Christmas party for police families, which would have been 1978 in Listonskey, and we were travelling home. And there was a very funny, looking back, there was a very funny atmosphere in the car, and my parents were whispering to each other, and clearly there was some sort of threat on at that time, but we were never told anything about any of that. And they were obviously trying to keep all of those things from us. But once we moved, obviously it was very obvious what had happened. Yeah. And because my father was a policeman, he was targeted, and we just had to move.
You say the family wasn't particularly political. Were you a religious family?
Well, we always went to church, yes, indeed. And even when my father, we were a one-car family, as most families were in those days. And even when Daddy was working in the police station in Rosslea, we would have walked to church on a Sunday. We never missed Sunday school. We never missed church. And from that, St Mark's Parish in Adramsea, I was baptised there. It's a very special place to me. It's where my father is now buried. And from that, I did form a very strong Christian faith from my childhood through my teenage years until now, when I've got through all the difficulties I've faced. I haven't done it alone, and that has been a strength for me, Gerry, I have to say.
Church of Ireland?
Yes, Anglican, yeah.
Anglican Church. You went to an all-girls grammar school in Enniskillen. What kind of a student were you? What were your interests then as a young teenager?
Well, I always say there's two things that were very important for helping me through what had happened. One was going to the grammar school, and it built up my self-esteem and gave me confidence. And I think that is, it may not be a very politically correct thing to say, Gerry, but I think that's because I was at an all-girls school. We had the space to develop in a way that I don't think I would have had if I had been at in a mixed school. So I'm a great believer in single-sex education, particularly for girls.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not the way most people look at it nowadays. And the second thing was I joined the Brownies and the Girl Guides. And I had an absolutely wonderful time in those organisations, so much so that I became a leader then in the Girl Guides for a long period of time.
Were you a very serious young girl?
I didn't think so. Maybe others thought so.
Were you?
I played hockey. I was, somebody that enjoyed life.
And a singer?
Well, I was in the church choir, yeah.
You wouldn't like to give us a wee verse of...
I think I've done that before, Gerry.
All together. That's life. We might get it beforehand.
You might get it before the end.
Again, the troubles came knocking at your door, not on the door, but on the bus that you were on, the school bus. You were only 16, and the IRA came to blow it up because the driver was a reserve...
EDR. He was EDR soldier.
EDR.
Yeah.
What another horrendous evening.
That was shocking because Enniskillen had happened in November of 1987. And that was such a shock to the community in Enniskillen. I was in the lower sixth at school at the time, and there was I always remember the Monday after it happened, I was in the common room for lower sixth, and there was just a silence. Nobody was talking, nobody was doing what we usually did after the weekend to catch up on everything that was going on. So there was a sense that Enniskillen was a watershed and that things were going to change. And then this happened in the June 1988, directly after that. So it was a huge shock, and it could have been much, much worse, of course.
Yeah.
It could have been people killed. The target was the UDR soldier who was driving the bus. The bomb was underneath where he was. Didn't go off when he opened up the bus, but allowed the bus to pick up a number of us. There were about 20 of us on the bus at that time, mixture of kids from different schools, and it went off at the bottom of the town and just reverberated right back down the bus.
And the little girl that was beside you was very badly injured.
Gillian was very badly injured, yeah. And I had guilt about that, Gerry, because I was in lower sixth. Gillian was only about, I think, second or third form. I was quite friendly with her sister. And we used to always fight on the bus about who could get at the window, because you could fall asleep if you were at the window, sort of fall asleep until you got to Enniskillen. And so I was at the window and Gillian was at the aisle, and the blast came down the bus and hit her here, and she was very, very seriously injured. She was in the Royal Victoria Hospital for quite a while. But I have to say, leads a wonderful life now.
Most young people who have come through two events like that, the assassination, the attempted killing of your father, the bus, would be more than a little bitter.
Yeah.
Did it embitter you?
Well, I think I was probably quite hard when I went up to Queen's University. There's no doubt about that. There hadn't been much, unlike today, mixing between the communities in Fermanagh at that time, because of the fact that you had the different schools. The only place you mixed was really either on the bus or after school.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really until I went to Queen's University that you were really integrating with other people from different backgrounds. And of course, I got involved in student politics when I arrived.
Why did you do that?
Queen's.
Was that because
well,
of
I
your...
think that's, yeah, well, I always had an interest in current affairs. And I did, my A-levels were in economics and history and English. So I had an interest in what was going on in the world. And I joined up. Peter Weir actually signed me up.
At Queen's?
the now education, or he was the education minister, and he and I have always remained firm friends ever since.
Why the UUP then?
Well, because the DUP were really not a force in Fermanagh at all. It was the mainstream political party, if you were a unionist, and there wasn't really a presence of the DUP at Queen's, and I was from Fermanagh, and Fermanagh was very much an Ulster-Unionist place.
Was that your way of revenge in any way? Are you going political?
No, I don't think it was revenge. I think it was something I was interested in, so I wanted to get involved in it.
You know, your Christian faith would tell you to love your neighbours, love your enemies. Mm-hmm. Have you been able to do that?
Well, look, I think it is something that I've thought about a lot. I try to find common ground with people that I don't agree with. And when I used to get attacked for going into government with militant Republicans, with Sinn Féin, people would say to me, how can you do that after everything you've been through? And I'd say, because I'm trying to make sure that what happened to me during my young years is not going to happen for my children, and we're actually going to find common ground and move on from that. That's what I was interested in.
Yes.
I was interested, of course, in advocating for the union and making sure that we stood up for the union and got people to vote for us and all of that sort of thing, absolutely. But it is about finding common ground, and that's where I think the Christian faith comes out. I mean, Christianity doesn't call you to be neutral, it calls you to be salt and light as to what you believe in. So I'm a strong unionist, but I'm also a believer in Christ, so I have to take all of that with me. So it's all of the person, not just bits of the person. And it does sometimes annoy me when people say that you have to take religion out of politics and leave religion at the door when you go to work.
Yes.
It's almost as if it only happens at the weekend.
Yes.
If you are a believer, it's part of who you are. So it actually doesn't leave you when you go to work. It's actually with you all the time.
So can you not take religion out of politics?
No, well, what I'm saying is...
Are they both intertwined?
No, what I'm saying to you is your Christianity and your faith is something that is with you all the time.
Yes.
So you can't just leave it at home on a Sunday night and pick it up again on Sunday morning.
Okay.
It's with you all the time. And I think actually when people talk about taking religion out of politics, it has a negative connotation, Gerry, whereas in actual fact, Christianity and faith should have a positive connotation for what people do in their everyday lives. To have that faith in the public square, to me, is very important. I may not agree with everything that's been said in the public square from different people from different faiths, but it's important that that is there.
You qualified from Queen's as a solicitor?
Yes.
Did you work at it?
Yes, I was, I was a solicitor in Enniskillen from 96 till 2001, and then I went to Portadown and I was a solicitor there until 2007, only on a part-time basis then, because I was also in the Shadow Assembly at that time as well.
Yes, yes. So the politics was still... Did you ever think, even at that stage, that politics would be your career rather than the law?
Yeah, I think I probably thought that I would become more involved once I became an Assembly member in the Shadow Assembly back in 2003. Much to the disgust of my employer, that I was moving out of law and into politics more. I mean, I really enjoyed law, and actually there's a lot of interchange between law and politics because you're helping people, you're advocating on their behalf, so there's a lot of interchange between them.
In 2004, you then jumped ship to the DUP.
I love the narrative, yes.
Why did you?
I jumped ship, yes.
Why did you do that?
Well, I think historically, everybody knows I felt that the Ulster-Unionist Party wasn't going in the direction that it should at that time. There was many Ulster-Unionist council meetings trying to discussed some of those issues, and we got to the point that I felt that it wasn't the place for me anymore, so I moved.
Did you not find, you were Church of Ireland, did you not find any conflict in the fact that you were leaving that church to join a political party that was steeped in this sort of hard-line free Presbyterianism?
But you see, the thing is, I never left the Church of Ireland. You're saying I left the church.
No,
I
yeah,
left the
I
party.
understand. But you joined a party that
yeah.
was steeped in that.
But I mean, to be fair to Dr. Paisley, he always said, this is a political party, not a church. Now, I know that there are some people within the party who see the two very closely linked, don't get me wrong, but he knew that there was a difference, because he used to joke with me and say, how are the Anglicans doing, Arlene? And I would say, well, I'm not sure about the whole Anglican communion, but this one's fine from Fermanagh. You know, so he knew that I wasn't about to don a beret and just wear skirts and all of that sort of stuff, which is, of course, where things were at in the early 2000s.
Was it ever suggested that you might have to do that?
No.
And you wouldn't have done it no matter what?
No, because I am a cradle Anglican, and, you know, I have a very strong belief in the liturgy. I love the Psalms, I love the services, so, I mean, I wasn't about to move from that.
Did you ever discuss this with Dr. Paisley?
No. He never approached the subject.
Really?
Nor would he, because I think he knew that...
How did you get on with him then?
I got on very well with him.
Did you like him?
Yeah, I did like him, yeah. There was a funny point where after the 2005 general election, Jimmy Spratt, who is now deceased, and myself had ran in South Belfast and Fermanagh and South Tyrone, and we obviously weren't successful, but we'd had a good election, and so Dr. Paisley had a service the following Sunday afternoon in Martyrs Memorial, and he asked us all to go, and of course we all went. And I was coming up the road with Brian and the children, and I got a call from the doc, would I read the scriptures? And I said, oh, yes, thank you very much, that's fine. And then I thought, once I put the phone down, I don't have a hat. I am not wearing a hat, and so I had to urgently ask somebody for a hat. Somebody had to bring me a hat to the church. Yeah, no, I did. I got on very well with Doc, yeah.
I was just thinking, just staying with the doc for a moment, when he became First Minister, it would appear to the public that he mellowed quite a bit in his latter years. He became less hardline. Did you feel that?
Well, you see, I never knew Doc personally until 2003, 2004, you see. So I think he probably was in a different space than he had been in the 60s, 70s, 80s, if you know what I mean.
But I wonder what changed him.
I don't know. I can't answer that, but all I know was that he was always very supportive of me as a female and as an Anglican, as an outsider maybe, some people would have seen me as, and as you know, asked me to be a minister in that administration in 2007, which I'm always very thankful for.
Well, you certainly rose through the ranks, no question. You became the leader of the DUP, first female to hold the job. First Minister, first female to hold that job. There must be a certain amount of pride in that fact alone.
No, I am very proud that I was the first female First Minister, because I think that's a historic thing and will be recorded as such. So yes, I am proud of that. And, you know, Gerry, you never really, when you're doing the job, and a lot of people here will recognise that, you never think about who you're influencing or what you're doing. But the amount of letters I had from young women after I stepped down from the job saying, I hadn't realised how important it was to me that you were our First Minister. Now you're gone. Which I thought was really lovely. And, you know, meeting young women and other women now who have said, you know, it was important that we had a female First Minister, you know, and we had somebody there, and thank you for doing that. And these are people from all different backgrounds. These aren't just unionist women. These are people from all different backgrounds.
The bubble was burst. Can we talk about RHI for a while?
You can. It wouldn't be an interview without it.
It wouldn't be an interview without it. You took the brunt of all the criticism.
Yeah.
Did you deserve it?
No, I don't think I deserved all of the criticism. Of course, I had to get the criticism because it was a scheme that was botched and has ended up costing the taxpayer £33 million. I mean, people talk about the cost of £500 million. Of course, that's not the true cost. If you look at what it cost to the taxpayer. It was £33 million extra on our grant. And when I look at some of the other overspends that are happening, I think, did we deserve to have a government collapse for 3 years over the head of that? I don't think we did. And I think
what went wrong?
Well, I think it was a number of things. I do think that things hadn't been going so well in terms of Sinn Féin felt that they were losing ground. Martin, of course, was not well at all. I think that played a part as well. And we got into a spiral and we couldn't stop it. And it got to a point then where the Assembly collapsed. And of course, I regret that it was down for 3 years.
You got some abuse at the time over that.
Oh, yeah.
How did you cope with that? How did the family cope with
Well,
that?
again, I have to say, I said this in the Assembly after the public inquiry reported, there are 3 things that got me through it. My family, my faith, and my friends. And you know who your true friends are, Gerry, when something like that happens, I have to say. And I really have to say my family really did. I was glad, actually, and this may sound like a very harsh thing to say, but I was glad my late father was not about at the time. I don't think he could have coped with it.
He didn't see you become First Minister?
No.
And he wouldn't want to have seen
No.
this. Was it the lowest part of your political career?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it was. But I was determined. I had been accused of all sorts of things. Corruption, all of that sort of stuff. And I knew it was all not true. There had been mistakes made. Absolutely, there had been mistakes made. And that needed to be acknowledged. But I knew that I would be cleared by the public inquiry because I hadn't done anything wrong in terms of those things that I had been accused of by people in the media and by other politicians.
But it was a cumulative effect because
Yeah.
that really began your downfall in many ways, did it not?
No, I don't think it did. I think...
Why did they all back up on you?
No, I think that was a different cumulative effect, if you like, of protocol, COVID, not being out engaging with the wider public and sensing the need for change. And some people were still playing out things that had happened back in 2008. So I think there was a number of things happening that led to what happened in April of this year.
Were you betrayed? Did you feel betrayed by them?
Well, I felt betrayed not by the people who organised the coup because I always knew that they were not people that wanted me to be in the position that I was in.
Did you know you had enemies within the DUP?
Oh, yeah. But I think every leader has internal enemies. Every leader has internal enemies because there are always people who want your job, Gerry. There are always people who want your job. And that's just the reality of it. I mean, any leader of a political party will know that there are others in the party that want their job. So there are always internal pressures because of that. But I felt sourced, I think, by people who were my friends and colleagues. And of course, some of them didn't sign the letter, but some of them did. And that's what hurt the most.
Did you ever see the letter?
No.
Still to this day, I've never seen the letter.
No, it was read out to me over the phone.
So what did you do? What did you think? Did you ever think, I'll fight this, I'll
No,
battle on?
no, I didn't. I discussed it with the family and I thought, now is the time. Things happen for a reason, Gerry. And I just felt that the time had come to move.
Wow.
And in every challenge, there's an opportunity. So that's it.
Who was it said, wasn't it Enoch Powell said that every political career ends in failure?
That's true.
Has yours ended in failure?
Well, no, I don't think it has, because when I look back at some of the things that we have achieved in Northern Ireland during my time, not just as First Minister, but also as Economy Minister, you know, bringing a lot of events to Northern Ireland, building up the economy during some tough times between 2007, 2008, 2009. I think that was a critical point as well. The tourism element to what I did, which is something I really enjoyed. Bringing gas, natural gas to the west of the province is something I'm very proud of because people now have access to that and they didn't have it before, particularly businesses. So No, I think I have always said this, and I always will say it. Politics is a wonderful thing to do. You have so many opportunities. It's tough, but it's a great challenge, and I would always encourage people to do it, even though it's getting tougher with social media and
Tougher
everything
and
else.
more tough on women than men?
I think so, because we are criticised for our appearance more so than men are criticised. I mean, we have to find something different to wear every day, whereas a man can turn up in the same suit, change his tie. I'm sure you've changed that tie a number of times. So, I mean, yeah, I think women are criticised. We're criticised for our hair, we're criticised for our weight, we're criticised for the way we talk, we're criticised for, numerous other things. I mean, you've seen it yesterday when Naomi was criticised.
Yes.
In the vile way that she was. And I mean, we put on this exterior, and I said this to her when I was speaking to her today, we put on this exterior that we're fine, we're okay. But it does have an impact, Gerry. It's bound to have an impact when you see the sort of thing that other humans are writing about you. That's the reality.
What hurt you the most, do you think?
I stopped looking at a lot of it because I was getting death threats and things like that. So I just left it to other people to report it and deal with it.
Your husband, Brian, we don't know much about Brian at all. What does he say about what? You must have had family discussions. Will I take the job of First Minister?
Yeah.
What was that family discussion like? Because you were a mother of 3.
Yeah.
You had to run a house. You had a political career. How on earth do you manage to do both
Well, you can
things?
only do it if you have support at home.
Yes.
And my late mother-in-law lived in a granny flat beside Brian and I and the 3 children, and she was completely brilliant. So when I didn't turn home when I was supposed to turn home, she was there when the kids came home from school. She was always supporting me, and she passed away in 2014. And we couldn't have done it without her. And of course, Brian has always been hugely, hugely supportive of me in the background, always staying in the background because he's not a politician and doesn't want to be a politician. But the difficulty is when people attack your family. That's when I get hurt more than anything.
Of course. And were the 3 kids ever threatened or?
Well, during RHI, it was pretty tough on the kids because they were at school.
Yeah.
And they were of a certain age, and they got a tough time.
What age?
And then I felt very guilty about it.
Of course you would. Of course you would. What age are the 3 of them now?
Well, yes, they're 21, 19, and 15.
There you go. So the youngest one was only at primary school when you.
Yeah, the youngest one actually was born in 2006. So during his entire life, I've been.
Who you are?
A minister. He thinks it's the most normal thing in the world for a woman to be a minister, which is great.
I only discovered when I was reading about you, your sister is married to your husband's brother.
That's right. Two brothers married 2 sisters.
How does that work out?
Well, it means that our children are full cousins.
Well, that's true. That's very true, yeah. Do you live close together?
No, my sister that's married to Brian's brother lives in England. But we are very close.
I just found that quite odd.
It's not as odd as you think, actually.
Isn't it? Brothers and sisters getting married?
I know other examples.
It must be a Fermanagh thing.
No, it's not. The other people I know are from Coleraine.
Looking back, do you have any regrets? Could you have done anything differently?
Of course you could.
Should you have done anything differently?
Of course you look back, and hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yes, of course.
And of course you don't have the benefit of it when you're taking decisions. So of course you would have done things differently. Of course you would have done, because when you see the way in which things work out, then you say, I should have done something different to that.
Yeah, but it's too easy to say nowadays.
It is absolutely easy to say when you're in hindsight mode.
Now that the shackles of politics are off you, do you feel more free to be yourself, to talk more openly?
Yes, but I also feel a responsibility to the cause which I am still very keen to advocate and talk about, which is the union. So I don't want to do anything that will damage that. But certainly I can do things that I want to do now in a freer way. And as you know, I'm doing some media stuff, which I really enjoy. I'm doing a bit of writing, which I enjoy as well. And would you believe, also helping out with a law firm. So I've gone back a wee bit to law as well. So I'm enjoying that as well.
Tell me a little bit about your television program. I used to do one myself. It's on News GB.
GB News,
GB
yes.
News,
so it's
GB
on
News.
on I go over on a Friday, and it's on Friday afternoon. So it's the briefing. So it looks at politics across the UK, what's happening, what are the big stories, and do some interviews with people.
And have you ever invited any of your DUP colleagues onto it?
Yeah, Sammy was on from his white van in Larne a couple
Was
of
he?
weeks ago. Yeah, ostensibly to talk about the budget.
So what's it like? You're doing the interviewing?
Yeah.
Yeah? You enjoying that?
Yeah, I am enjoying that because you have the political knowledge and you're now using it in a different way.
Of course.
And it's for me it's a challenge because you're learning new skills. And of course I'm a novice, as you know. So you're just picking things up as you go along. But I mean, genuinely, I'm at an age now, everybody knows what age I am because you Google it and what have you. So I'm 51. Being 51, it's a good age to do something new, Gerry. You know, if it had been 5 years later or whatever, I mightn't have been in a position to do something different.
Yeah.
So I'm actually embracing that because I am a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. So what happened must have happened for a reason.
No grudges.
No, I don't have grudges because if you have grudges, the only person you're damaging is yourself.
Yeah.
Actually, you're wasting your time having a grudge and having bitterness, and frankly, I'm not interested in that.
So have you any contact with your Mr. Poots or anybody like that?
It'll not surprise you to know. No, I haven't
Really?
any contact with them.
Have you fallen out with him?
No, I haven't fallen out with them. I just don't have any contact with them.
You were never in with him.
Yes, exactly.
What about a seat in the Lords?
Well, I mean, that's not for me, as you know.
I know, but would you like one?
You don't apply.
Would you? No, I
You don't
know that.
apply
But
for those
so would you like one?
Well, look, I'll see what comes up.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Gerry. Thank you.
Gerry, please thank Arlene Foster.